Hello everyone, I'm MVL, and in this video we're going to be unboxing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection Asia region version, which I got from Play Asia. We'll also be checking out gameplay for all 14 or so games included in this collection. Their games are Jewel Monsters, Jewel Monsters 2 Dark Jewel Stories, Monster Capsule, Dark Jewel Stories, Jewel Monsters 4, Dungeon Dice Monsters, The Eternal Jewelist Soul, Jewel Monsters 6 Expert 2, The Sacred Cards, Rashef of Destruction, Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Jewel, World Championship Tournament 2004, Destiny Board Traveler, and 7 Trials to Glory World Championship Tournament 2005. As you can see, Play Asia included some bonus stickers as well. And the bonus card I got for this version was Sayaru, whereas the English localized release of this included Harpy's Feather Duster as a bonus card instead. But one of the reasons I went for this version was that the cover art wasn't dominated advertising the included card, and I think that looks better. And it still plays in English. This did have an update when I used it, which was over 800 megabytes. I think that helps smooth out some issues emulating the original games. Many of the included games have been translated to English for the first time in this collection, and the games have language options for different versions, and manuals can also be viewed. Some of the games have cheats to unlock everything from the start if you want, and there are visual options for screen size, filters, and borders, which I turned off for recording gameplay in this video. There's also a rewind feature if you want as well. With all that said, let's take a look at the games in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection. First up we have Jewel Monsters for the Game Boy. Being the first and oldest card game adaptation in this collection, and especially considering the hardware that it is on, Jewel Monsters is simpler than other games that came after it. Some of the cards and game rules have also been simplified in this game as well, and this is the only game in this collection that's not available in colour, but you can apply a colour tint in the options if you want. In the campaign you can choose and battle other Jewelists, and you must defeat each opponent 5 times to proceed to other battles. You are also rewarded new cards for winning as well. This formula will continue through many of the other card games in this collection. Despite being simplified, this game is still very playable, and I think it's interesting to see where the other games in this collection built up from. That's Jewel Monsters on the Game Boy. Next up we have Jewel Monsters 2 Dark Jewel Stories for the Game Boy Color. If you play the Japanese version of this game, you can choose to play the Game Boy or Game Boy Color version if you want. This game plays much the same as the previous game, but there have been a lot of new cards added and new opponents to battle, and I think that the color graphics also help to visualize the game a bit better as well. The game still plays simpler than the real card game, with some cards and rules altered and skipping through phases to speed the game up. But as with the previous game, I think that this game is still very playable and actually pretty fun. That's Jewel Monsters 2 Dark Jewel Stories on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Monster Capsule on the Game Boy Color. Though if you play the Japanese version of this game, you can choose to play the Game Boy or Game Boy Color version. This is a tactical role-playing game. That's right, if you thought that every game in this collection would be a trading card game, you would be wrong, and it's time for something completely different. Kaiba hasn't taken well to his defeat at the hands of Yugi, and has captured Yugi's friends and will only release them if Yugi can battle his way through 5 floors in a tower of adversaries, and then face Kaiba himself. Each floor allows Yugi to spend star points on new capsules with random monsters inside, and use those monsters in tactical battle to bet star points against opponents on that floor, eventually defeating a boss for each floor and moving up the tower. Battles take place in turn-based combat with a team of up to 4 monsters moving one at a time. Many monsters battle differently with different ranges of attack and different powers. I really dig this game, and its free roaming movement between areas was ahead of its time for this game series. That's Monster Capsule on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Dark Jewel Stories for the Game Boy Color, which was known as Jewel Monsters 3 in Japan. This game builds on the games that came before it, but the game has still been simplified from the actual trading card game, with cards and rules altered. This game does include star levels for monsters, which allows tribute summons of more powerful monsters, and a new monster alignment mechanic, which is not from the actual card game, has been added, where certain types of monsters have advantages or disadvantages over others. For example, a fire monster can instantly defeat a forest monster in this game. The story mode continues the theme of defeating opponents 5 times each to proceed to new battles, and overall I think this game is pretty good, though I can see if you are used to the actual card game rules, the new monster type gimmick might take some getting used to. That's Dark Jewel Stories on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Yu-Gi Deck on the Game Boy Color. This is the first of 3 separate, similar games that are actually only counted as one in this collection. That's right, 14 games were advertised in this collection, but you technically actually get 16. Think of this like Pokemon Blue, Red and Yellow, where the games are the same, but some things inside the games, in this instance cards, will be different. The game plays mostly the same as Dark Jewel Stories, including the monster alignment rule and the story having you beat opponents 5 times to move on. That's Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Yu-Gi Deck on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Kaiba Deck on the Game Boy Color, and it's good to be the bad guy. Is Kaiba really that bad though? I think he ends up being more of a Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z equivalent, if that makes sense. Why am I saying that? Well, there's not much to say here that hasn't already been said for the previous game. You get to wield Blue Eyes White Dragon instead of Dark Magician in this game, but I personally always preferred Dark Magician. What do you prefer? Tell me in the comments. That's engagement. Anyway, that's Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Kaiba Deck on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Joey Deck on the Game Boy Color, or Jonushi Deck as it would be known in Japan. Wait, Joey? I thought this was Battle of the Great Jewelists. I'm kidding, calm down Joey fans. Is Joey your favourite character? Let me know in the comments. That's engagement. This game is like the previous 2 games, except that you can play Red Eyes Black Dragon. Cool. That's Jewel Monsters 4, Battle of the Great Jewelists, Joey Deck on the Game Boy Color. Next up we have Dungeon Dice Monsters on the Game Boy Advance, which is a video game adaptation of a Yu-Gi-Oh board game of the same name. The game requires the player to roll dice in the hope of summoning monsters and gaining expendable resources to make actions like to move and battle with summoned monsters, in an effort to defeat your opponent at the other end of the board. Summoning monsters adds tiles to the board, and the board needs to be filled with tiles to allow monsters' movement to reach your opponent at the other end of the board. If you are used to the card game, this board game might have a bit of a steep learning curve, which is made harder by the fact that it doesn't include a tutorial in-game. The individual duels themselves can be quite long, with no way to quickly save during a duel, which may be problematic for a portable game. I did get into this after figuring things out, but I can understand this game's complexity being a put-off. That's Dungeon Dice Monsters on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have the Eternal Jewelist Soul on the Game Boy Advance, which is also known as Jewel Monsters 5 Expert 1 in Japan. The English version of this game has different graphics than the Japanese version as well. The jump in hardware here allows this card game adaptation to be more complex than the games preceding it, As such, the game itself and cards are much more accurate to the actual card game, and the game uses the actual turn phases as per the rules. Going forward, each game begins with rock, paper, scissors to decide who goes first, and upon winning in this game you receive a pack of cards to open instead of a singular card as reward. And I think opening packs is much more fun, and having more cards makes altering decks more enjoyable as well. You get to choose one of 3 starter decks to begin with, and you have to defeat each tier of opponents a set number of times to proceed to the next tier in a similar vein to the previous games. This game also featured the funniest Joey misplay I encountered when recording all of the games, as Joey had me totally beat with me only having one defending monster to Joey's many attacking. My one monster must have scared Joey, because for some reason Joey summoned Time Wizard and flipped a coin. If winning, he'd destroy my monster, but if he lost the flip, he'd wipe out all of his monsters instead. Guess what happened? That's right, Joey clutched defeat from the jaws of victory, and allowed me to crawl back to a win. I guess Joey has a hard time making decisions without Yugi coaching him directly. Defend that, Joey fans. I'm just kidding. And I thought this game was pretty great. That's the Eternal Jewelist Soul on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 on the Game Boy Advance, which is only in Japanese in this collection, because the English modified version of this game, Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Jewel, is also included in this collection. So if you want to play this game in English, you're not really missing out if you don't count or don't play this version of this game. And with that in mind, we'll be covering the English version more later in this video, and we'll focus on that version instead for this video. That's Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have the Sacred Cards on the Game Boy Advance, which was also known as Duel Monsters 7 The Jewel City Legend in Japan. In this game, you can actually free roam environments and speak to other Jewelists and request a battle, which I think is a massive step up. The game also includes all the previous gameplay enhancements from the previous game, but with a redesigned play area which I think looks more clear. My only complaint would be that you obtain new cards from dueling by offering an ante of your own cards to take cards from your opponent, and I'm pretty much morally against betting cards on a winning outcome. With that said, you can also buy cards from a shop in this game as well. Overall, I think this game is a great improvement and shows a lot of growth in the game series to this point, and it's pretty fantastic if you ask me. That's the Sacred Cards on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have Rashef of Destruction on the Game Boy Advance, which is known as Duel Monsters 8 Great Evil God of Destruction in Japan. The story of this game is actually quite involved, which I like, albeit non-canonical to the anime. Rashef, the Dark Being, has been unleashed, and has done away with all of the powerful Millennium items such as Yugi's Millennium Puzzle, which he uses to summon a powerful duelist spirit and cheat in card games. What? That is cheating. Anyway, whilst visiting Tia, Ishizu brings a warning of this to yourself, Yugi and Joey, and Ishizu begs of you to search for powerful Egyptian god cards to defeat Rashef before ruin befalls the world. That sounds pretty awesome, right? Anyway, this game plays much the same as the previous game, if a tad slower, but I do really appreciate the story this game brings, where you play in a world so dominated by a card game that I can't board a train without defeating the operators in a tag battle card duel first with Yugi. I got to choose Yugi or Joey to help in the battle, and I didn't choose Joey, and it made him mad. But why would I ever choose Joey? Anyway, I like this game a lot, it's pretty fun. That's Rashef of Destruction on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Jewel on the Game Boy Advance. This is the updated version of Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 featuring English language. It was later released in Japan as Duel Monsters International Worldwide Edition. Some of the card art has been modified to be less controversial than the original Japanese version of this game. I don't think that this is a big deal at all, but I thought I'd mention it because some people do. The gameplay here is similar to the Eternal Jewelist Soul, which makes sense when you consider that this game is based off a game made before the Sacred Cards and Rashef of Destruction. What's new here is that you have a sort of world map where you can pick events to participate in on each day in-game. Sometimes you might get information or cards or find an opponent to duel, all working towards making your deck better to enter tougher tournaments. Your deck can start out a little underpowered in this game, and I actually got wrecked by Tia in my first duel. One neat way to get more cards is that you can actually enter passwords from real booster packs in the password screen to gain new cards in-game. And I actually remember doing this back in the day and held on to booster packaging for that purpose. Once you get your deck powered up, things do get easier. That's Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Duel on the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have World Championship Tournament 2004 on the Game Boy Advance, which is also known as Duel Monsters Expert Free in Japan. The gameplay here is similar to the previous game, but the story mode just has you selecting opponents directly in the vein of older games in the series. Whilst that might seem like a step back for the story, I think that this entry was intended as a throwback and to focus on gameplay first. The gameplay here is certainly good, and this is still a good game. I like that you win full booster packs instead of singular cards, and the deck building menu is easy to use as well. If you're looking for just the card game aspect with no other complications, this might be the game for you. That's World Championship Tournament 2004 for the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have Destiny Board Traveler on the Game Boy Advance, which is known as Sugoroko no Sugoroko in Japan. This is a board game where you battle against other players on a looping board to acquire a certain number of victory stars to win the game. You get stars by summoning monsters from random dice rolls, where you must set your summons on each side of the dice. You should set all faces, because if you roll a blank face, you can't do anything. If you summon a monster, you can use that monster to take over card placements on the board by battle. The rewarded stars are equal to the star level of your winning monster. You can tribute a monster which loses its stars to summon a more powerful monster at a higher level, and this will be more powerful and much harder to take over, which can be important because you lose star points if an opponent takes over one of your card placements. Be wary, because if you lose battles, you can also lose life points, which may also lose you the game. This game in particular seems like it'd be more fun against real players linked up, or as an actual board game. I think that this is an interesting idea for sure though, and it is good for quick play action. That's Destiny Board Traveler for the Game Boy Advance. And finally we have 7 Trials to Glory World Championship Tournament 2005, which is also known as Day of the Jewelist World Championship Tournament 2005 in Europe, and Duel Monsters International 2 in Japan. This is the last and most modern game on this collection. The gameplay is the most up-to-date and mirrors the existing card game accurately. A starter deck and booster packs are obtained from using Jewelist points at shops. Jewelist points are this game's currency, and it is accrued through winning duels. Duels can be found throughout the game world and in tournaments, and the game features a world map and many sub-areas to explore and find opponents to battle. Overall, I think this game is great. My only issue with this game came right at the start, where they teach you about banned cards which are prohibited in your deck, but change throughout the game timeline. Your starter deck likely has banned cards to begin with, but you can't actually edit them out until you try to duel and a dialogue prompts you to automatically remove them. Then you can duel after, and the game doesn't actually allow you to edit the aforementioned banned cards out of your deck until you go through that exact process of automatically removing them, which I found somewhat unintuitive, being as I wanted to remove those cards manually myself, but couldn't. Anyway, that's only a minor complaint in this otherwise excellent game, and I think that really picking something possibly inconsequential like that as an issue speaks to the promise and power of quality of the rest of the game. It really is very good, as was this whole collection, and with that in mind I hope we see another Yu-Gi-Oh collection down the line, possibly with the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era games included. That was 7 Trials to Glory World Championship Tournament 2005 on the Game Boy Advance. And there you have it. That was my unboxing of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection on the Switch. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like or a comment to let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. And if you'd like to, you can also support me through Patreon or YouTube channel membership. Thank you for watching. I've been MVL, and I will catch you next time.